right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. We'll just get started right away. I know lunchtime is such an important time. I don't want to use your time waiting for other people to come in. We can just let them in as they come. But welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. I'm Crystal Churcher. We're joined with Wayne from ChildFriendly today. Our topic today is all about learning frameworks and learning philosophies and different styles of what those could be in your center. Like any of our Lunch and Learns, we're here just to share an operator to operator insight and support for you. This is not by any means meant to represent something from licensing or anything around that. And today, being based on learning frameworks and philosophies, it's really just a high level explanation of what those different kind of styles could look like in your centers. A really like practical kind of guide to explain how they differ from each other, how they're the same, and how you can incorporate them into just kind of your everyday practice without having to go and invest a ton of money and resources. What you can do to just bring in different components of these philosophies to support different kinds of children too that might be in your center. So with that being said, we'll get right into it today. Like any of our Lunch and Learns, we are very grateful to have ChildFriendly here supporting us and making sure that these Lunch and Learns happen every 2 weeks for you. We will take a lot of questions throughout. You're welcome to put your hand up if you have a question or use a chat, but we'll also stop at the end and leave time for questions for myself or for Wayne. And yeah, so today is all about exploring different philosophies, different frameworks, and inspiring your practice. We're going to talk a little bit about why learning frameworks matter, how you can, incorporate them, and what the different styles look like for Montessori, Reggio Emilia, Emergent, and Flight framework, which is our Alberta framework here. So why do learning philosophies matter? I love this quote when I put the slides together that, trust is the foundation of every strong family, operator, and partnership. Building a framework in your center, incorporating different components from a variety of different frameworks is really building a shared language for your teaching and for your learning. It shapes the why behind what you're doing each day. It puts intention into your practice. And a strong framework really supports inclusion, curiosity, and belonging. And I'm a big believer that you can incorporate different components from different frameworks and philosophies in a meaningful way that can really support a diverse group of children, diverse age groups and needs of all the children in your care. So we're going to start today with Montessori. This is a term that gets thrown out a lot. A lot of things are Montessori inspired and in our area, in our sector. And today I don't want to come across, I'm not an expert in any of these fields. I incorporate components of each of these frameworks and philosophies in my own center, in my own curriculum that we have built in our center. But by no means am I an expert or specially trained in any of these. And these are very high level, just to give you guys a little bit of an explanation about what each one is and how you can bring it into your practice. So Montessori is really based on the belief that children are naturally eager to learn when they're offered independence, order, and freedom within limits. The educator's role in a Montessori environment is to model the work and then step back. So the core idea is summed up beautifully with the phrase, "Help me do it myself." Learning happens through real tools, through repetition, and calm, ordered spaces that help children become confident and capable. The core beliefs around this, like I just mentioned, help me do it myself, calm, ordered spaces, creating those confident, capable learners. You will find as we go through each of the philosophies and frameworks, you're going to see that there are definitely things and components that carry over from one to the other. Wanting to talk a little bit about what does Montessori look like in practice. And again, not an expert opinion here, just high level for you to have some understanding so you can incorporate if you choose to in your centers. So some materials that support independence, we're looking for practical life with Montessori, child-sized tools, pictures, dressing frames. I threw some photos in here of some Montessori-based activities. You'll see some cylinders and nesting blocks for language and math, for paper letters, counting rods, and your environment would really be around those like low shelves to build independence, real life tools, real life experience, and very clean, orderly classrooms and spaces. I really, for my own program and for when I've been talking with other operators, I like to look at what we can do as educators to really support children. So, we can have a philosophy that we're incorporating into our program, but how is it actually going to support the children that are in our care, and what children would really say thrive under that kind of framework if you were to implement it? So for a Montessori philosophy, Montessori inspired activities in your center, children who really prefer structure, order, repetition tend to thrive under those activities. You can really support certain behaviors like concentration, self-regulation, fine motor refinement, independence, and persistence with these style of activities and planning. So an example of a child who would do well under this framework would be a child who enjoys doing the same tasks repeatedly, like pouring water, as a repetition is encouraged to. So for each of our frameworks, I've put together two really simple basic activities that are inspired by this style. So for Montessori, we have a practical life pouring. So something as simple as setting up something like pitchers or cups with water and sponges. You could show the child or the children, the group, how you're pouring that water out of the pitcher into those cups. And it really encouraged the independence. But this is a real life, real practical skill that builds independence, supports fine motor development, and has calm focus. Another one is object sorting. So, you could have some small items. There's a picture of a pretty standard, kind of like Melissa and Doug style sorting of dinosaurs based on color up above, and then something a little bit more natural below in the basket. But you could really have anything. This is wide open for how you want to set it up, but having something like shells or buttons or animals for children to sort, it creates that focus on order and concentration, not necessarily speed. Again, building independence and fine motor control and calm focus. So for our next one, we're going to touch a little bit on Reggio Emilia philosophy. I've put a quote based on each of them in the top right. So children are powerful, rich in potential, and active participants in constructing their own knowledge. Under a Reggio Emilia approach, the philosophy really views children as capable, curious citizens who learn through collaboration, creativity, and relationships. Learning is co-constructed with educators and families. Reggio emphasizes what's called the 100 languages of children, meaning there are endless ways for children to express themselves through art, movement, storytelling, or play. Documentation plays a big role. We capture children's ideas, dialogue, progress visually, making learning visible. The environment is also considered the third teacher under this program. Some of the materials that would really support this philosophy are flexible, open-ended, so sensory bins, blocks, role-playing materials, nature collections. A lot of things you're going to see that we put in the materials for different philosophies are hopefully things you just have in your everyday centers already that you could kind of incorporate in a different, more intentional way. Interest-based additions to activities and themes like books or props and tools that are linked to what the children are curious about. So a toy car for a vehicle theme, magnifying glasses for a bug theme are some of the examples that came up under this one. Really adaptable environment, so spaces that can shift quickly to follow new themes. And I threw some photos in the right here of some kind of Reggio inspired practices in different classrooms. Again, we're going to touch a little bit on kind of who this practice may support. So children who are very expressive, imaginative, and social, children who enjoy collaboration, behaviors that you could support with some of these activities in your practice. would be around creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, communication, and empathy. And an example of this would be a child that's fascinated with shadows and maybe inspire a group project with flashlights and drawings and storytelling around light and dark. And two kind of very basic Reggio activities that you could bring in is a shadow play exploration. So, incorporating things like flashlights and light tables and transparent objects, encouraging the observation of what's happening with those objects. So what happens if we move closer, document drawings and dialogue around what the children are experiencing and what they're doing with those objects. And your outcome around this would be all about collaboration and creativity in action. Another one is a collaborative art mural. This can look so many different ways, but just an idea to throw out would be to have some butcher paper, paint and brushes, really build on a group work project, a community of self-expression. So again, you're playing on that collaboration and creativity in action. And our next one is going to be around emergent curriculum. We often get a lot of questions about this one. I find when I'm talking to newer operators who are starting, I do find that sometimes people misunderstand what emergent curriculum can be. But an emergent curriculum philosophy is really it grows directly from the children's interests. Rather than following a rigid plan, educators observe and capture curiosity, build experiences around that. Your plans shift daily and learning is authentic and child-led. Materials are flexible and open-ended, just like Reggio, allowing environments to transform as new materials as new interests appear. So you could, really shift your plans. You could really look at what children are doing, what they're interested in, and build around that. Some materials that would support this philosophy. So we're looking at almost, a crossover from some of the other philosophies. It's definitely open-ended, like the Reggio approach, flexible. You could have, again, additions to like your themes maybe in your center with interest-based additions like books and props. We've added a picture here of kind of a garden center. You could add some bugs to that to kind of keep building different things along those lines. And really having an adaptable environment that shifts easy to support the themes and those interest changes. So who really benefits under an emergent philosophy or emergent curriculum in your program? Children who are spontaneous and curious, and easily engaged by novelty. Children with diverse needs and interests drive participation. Behaviors that you can support with these types of activities and planning would be an initiative, a curiosity, and exploration, flexible thinking, collaboration. Is an example of an activity that would be great under an emergent program was if you had children who were showing excitement spotting ants outdoors. Educators might create a bug exploration corner the next day, supporting attention, wonder, and group inquiry. That could look like a lot of different things. You could have some books, you could have some real life examples, some pictures, even sorting materials around bugs that would all play into what the interests that are being shown from those children. Some really easy, simplified emergent activities that you could incorporate. A bug hunt adventure. So we have magnifying glasses, clipboards, curiosity. You could do this indoors or outdoors. Sorry, I don't know if my presentation has just stopped sharing. Yeah, hopefully you can see it again. So bug activity adventure, you could follow with questions about where else you could look for bugs. You can have books about bugs and stories about bugs and songs about bugs. It's kind of endless. The outcome of an activity around this would really support curiosity, flexible thinking, and exploration. Another one is all around water play in science. And again, you could incorporate this in 1,000 different ways, but adding some cups and funnels and floating and sinking experiments into your water tables, adding new materials based on their discoveries. So maybe you start out really simplified one day and add some different animals or different objects that may float and may sink and have the children kind of predict what could happen. Again, supporting that curiosity, the flexible thinking and exploration. And then we're going to close with flight framework. And you may have heard a lot of the phrases, a lot of kind of the wording and language that we see in flight throughout those other three that we talked about earlier. The philosophy here is really to had a value-based framework, recognizing that children are mighty learners and citizens. Flight is not meant as a curriculum, it's meant as a framework. So that often gets kind of misunderstood in our sector sometimes. It's not prescriptive, it's relational, reflective, and inclusive. So you really want to shift your mindset from instructor to learning partner in this, which is not outside of some of the other practices we've seen, especially under more of a Reggio approach. You want to emphasize holistic development, so supporting the whole child, the mind, the body, the spirit. Play is central to learning. Educators are co-learners, and the environments you're creating are there to nurture belonging and curiosity. Some of the materials that would support flight, again, would be very supportive of the other areas we talked about: loose parts and open-ended materials, documentation tools, so photos and portfolios and displays, and comfort items for belonging, family photos, cozy corners, diverse expression media, so art and music and storytelling, dramatic play, books that reflect multiple cultures and languages. So you're really focusing on representation, inclusion, and voice. Sorry, this is a bit more repetition of what I was just talking about. So the comfort items, the diverse expression, implementing flight, there's really 4 reflective steps. So you're going to observe and listen, notice play, curiosity, and interactions, co-construct, so extend the learning based on the interest, which really requires our educators to be engaged and observing and part of the environment, paying attention, interested in. Reflect and document, so capture what matters and why, so that again, you can extend the learning and really build on those interests. And connect with families, so sharing stories and inviting input from families. And then the goals, the 4 goals around flight. So we want to really focus on the well-being, emotional security, health, and belonging of the children, play and playfulness to protect open-end play, participation and citizenship, so respecting the voice, seeing the child as that mighty learner and citizen, and communication and literacies, so honor many ways of expression. This is like kind of our closing. So, you know, I think as an educator, as someone who's implementing different styles of learning, different philosophies, different frameworks into your program, you can build this into really whatever you would like. I hope that we're able to kind of give you a little bit of inspiration from each of these methods and each of these practices. Every really offers something powerful. You can see that each one can really support a different child or a different need, even support different behaviors under that framework. Montessori can bring focus, Reggio can bring creativity, Emergent can bring curiosity, and flight can bring belonging. You can mix these, they all support each other. Together they shape spaces where every child can belong, explore, and grow. And with that, before we take questions and everything, I'm going to open it up to Wayne, because there's some new features with ChildFriendly that really support your planning and your learning philosophies in your centers, that he's just going to touch on, and then we'll stop and take all kinds of questions and discussion that you might have. So,
hey folks, sorry, just interjecting very quickly on what's upcoming with our platform. We will be having our learning module release in the next week. You know, things that we'll have on there will include curriculum planning. We will preload flight in there, and we will also have the ability to customize curriculums as well. There will also be lesson plans that you can share, a daily progress report where you can integrate with your journals, as well as you know, a calendar feature where you can plan events, and if you want to share things such as a schedule for meal planning, that's available as well. Thanks so much, Crystal.
Thanks, Wayne. All right, so we always kind of close out the same way with some resources, some general supports for you guys. The next Lunch and Learn is going to be on the 12th. It's going to be all about audits and success with your audits and your financial reporting. But for now, if there's any questions around anything we covered or anything anybody wants to have a discussion about, I'm very happy to do what I can and try and answer your questions. Jennifer, you have your hand up? Do you want to go first?
Yeah, so as an opted out, well, first of all, thank you.
Welcome.
As an opted out like as a privately run center that's not part of CWELC, I'm seeing a trend in kind of parents that are opting out of going to a CWELC center, really looking for these type of keywords. So Montessori, Reggio Emilia, not necessarily understanding what it means and not necessarily having a deep understanding of the philosophies behind it. And based on, that's why I was especially curious about this presentation, because I'm considering whether it makes sense to integrate a little bit more of these practices so that we can kind of lead with those keywords to parents that, again, aren't necessarily fully understanding it anyway, are just associating these with kind of higher quality or not daycare. In your last slide, you said that you can mix them. Like, what would that look like in practice? You would just pull different moments or different activities that are inspired essentially by these different practices?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert in this. I don't have any specialized training in any of these, just to be super transparent. I think that like my goal with this presentation is because I do see a lot of people using these words and not knowing really what they mean or even the philosophies behind these frameworks. So I just wanted to give a little bit of like high level understanding of what kind of the intention of each of them is. For my own center, the way we kind of blend our curriculum is more about the children in the program than it is necessarily having a fully, Montessori or Reggio program. We're not, but we want to support children especially in behaviors and certain needs. So for my own self, we have really looked at how we support the behaviors with what practice, and then we incorporate kind of the activities around that. So, if we're finding that there is children that really, really thrive in a structured kind of, environment where there's a lot of repetition and they know exactly what's coming, then we'll plan more based on kind of a Montessori philosophy and build those activities in because those children are really doing well with that. So I think, I don't know if I have a black and white answer for you.
Like you do in parallel with it, like you might have one group that's more oriented towards structured moments and you have another group that's more creative. So you're still kind of running those things in parallel, essentially.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's just, planning with intention, right? So it depends on how you want to structure your program. Everybody is so different and we still have autonomy over how we do our programming. So embrace that. But I think that
it's possible to merge.
Yeah, I think so. But again, I'm not an expert on any of these, but I have had my center for 14 years and yes, we have been merging all different forms of learning. And I think that as educators, we just need to be understanding of what each of these are so that we could explain it to a parent if we are using those terms. And then we also know how to implement them because it sounds great when you call yourself a Reggio program when you're marketing your center, but if you don't know what that means, you don't know how to implement it, it's totally lost. So
yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Ganit, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Just to kind of touch on what you guys were just talking about. I did it a long time ago, so I don't know how much light I can shed on it, but
Sure.
I did do my level 1 in Montessori some time ago, and our program also follows Emergent. I have noticed a big difference of the two. It's the materials used. So in Montessori, I find they really focus on practical life skills for the children in the classroom. So I think a lot of their activities are kind of based on the trays that they create for practical life skills. So anything from like cleaning a table to taking care of plants, kind of all those kind of things that we would do in our daily day-to-day life, they kind of make it age appropriate for children, and kind of those are the activities that they do in the room, versus I think Emergent is a little more free flowing in what they do. And like you said, based on the child's interest and what we're observing they like. And that's the big difference I noticed, kind of just with like the materials and what they do.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Totally valid, especially if you're going to be a true Montessori program, right? If that's your
Right.
philosophy, then you need to really understand and have and specialize in that. But you know, if you're talking about your kind of average everyday childcare operator who just wants to understand and maybe incorporate little bits of each of these programs, yeah, you'd be looking at different materials for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments or discussion points before we wrap up? All right. Well, thank you, Wayne. Thank you for your time again today.
Thank you, Crystal.
If you're joining us every 2 weeks, the next one we will have one of our partners from an accounting firm called RLP here in Calgary, who's going to lead us through audit success and setting you guys up for your audits in Alberta, so that you can be successful with your affordability grant funding and your audit requirements. So we'll see you at in 2 weeks. Thanks, Wayne. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
have a great day.
Bye, guys.
Bye.